So welcome all. Enactus Miranda House is back with another enlightening session. So as we all know, one of the most devastating impacts of this pandemic has been on our economy, and all of us are curious with questions on what the scenario is going to look like post pandemic and how the economy is going to recover. So we have with us our panelists, Ms. Meeta Kumar and Ms. Nandini Dutta, to answer our questions and give us an insight into what's going to happen economically. Ms. Meeta Kumar is an associate professor in the Department of Economics, Miranda House. She has done her Master's of Philosophy and Economics from the Delhi School of Economics and graduated from the Lady Shri Ram College. She is actively involved with various organizations in conducting debates, seminars, and workshops, and focusing on interdisciplinary perspectives in teaching and promoting intercultural interactions. And Ms. Nandini Dutta, she is an associate professor in the Department of Economics, Miranda House. She has done her master's in economics from the Jawaharlal Nehru University. In 2015, she was honored with the award for the best display for her innovation project Kashmiriyat, a study of colonial and post-colonial Kashmir at Antardhwani. Ma'am, we are very glad to have you both on board today for today's discussion, and let's hope this discussion today is fulfilling for all of us. Thank you. Welcome.
All right, ma'am. So let's get started with the questions. My first question is for you, Nandini ma'am. Due to the economic crisis because of COVID-19, post-pandemic restrictions on global trade seems inevitable. What kind of policies do you believe would be taken up to ease the situation?
Look, the pandemic as we see it is supposedly thought to be a disruption which is not merely a biological disruption, a zoonotic, quirky disease about which we had no knowledge till very recently. And it's a kind of a very minuscule stuff that jumps, it's a pathogen that jumps species. So essentially, we have to understand it, that how do you connect at all this pandemic of COVID to the economic situation. As you would be aware, all of you, although I may use some terms which I don't know, differently you may understand or not understand. The world has been organized, say, under a model of capitalist production. And this model of capitalist production that we have been witness to has been a post-1970s kind of a reorganization of the same form of capitalism into what we called neoliberalism. What happened with neoliberalism is essentially the primacy of the market and the receding of the state. That is, the state was looked upon that you should not interfere into the economic realm. You have many other important things to do. So let the economy just be there with the market as its regulator. As a result of all that, the kind of social welfare spending that we had seen in the Keynesian era, something around 1945 to 1970, was all going haywire, in the sense that we were, and it is not true that it is only in countries like India that the social sector spending in health and education went down. It went down almost everywhere, except that, you know, the GDP proportions were much higher in the case of, say, America, or later, of course, China. But the fact of the matter is that the health infrastructure was something, except some of the welfarist national economies like Sweden and some European economies, which includes Italy, which however has been very badly affected during the pandemic. We have seen a continuous cut in the health infrastructure spending. So that is one thing. The other thing is that there has been an enormous amount of physical connectivity because of opportunities of travel and communication, air flights, etc., and the integration of the world, what you today call economic globalization. And the third point that I want to raise is that we are witnessing that whatever has been the developmental paradigm, there has been a sustained decrease in the quality of the environmental parameters. So now, if you have to look at the cause and the effect, then is it the destruction of the environment that is giving rise to new kinds of all these new pathogens, or is it the other way? We are not too sure. But if you want to tell me that it is because of the pathogen, it is because of this COVID that we are into an economic recession or a serious economic trouble, that may not be the correct way of looking, because I think the economy was already under stress. And today we are using, in a certain sense, the COVID to kind of legitimize the sustenance of that system. So I don't see in a post-COVID world, we are drastically going to change the way in which we organize ourselves. You can have some social solidarities, you can have scientists getting together to get your vaccine in place, etc. But fundamentally, the problems that plagued the system much before COVID came are going to be continued in the future. So actually, to say that the system will ease out, or there can be policies by which you can ease out, is possibly not going to happen until and unless you look at the organization of production completely differently from the neoliberal paradigm.
All right, ma'am, thanks for your answer. Now moving on to the next question. My next question is for you, Meeta ma'am. Last decade witnessed first world countries calling for three major changes, that is deconstruction, reconstruction and reorientation for international organizations like WHO and WTO. Do you think this change would make these organizations more accountable?
You have a very imbalanced panel, because we really agree, Nandini and I, on most things. So I'm going to more or less repeat what Nandini is saying, because your problem is not what's happening in this pandemic. This pandemic is only, in many ways, lighting the problems that have continued from the pre-past, right? So your problem, for example, with the WTO or the WHO is not what has happened in the COVID pandemic. It sort of highlights, and it just limelights the kind of inequalities and the kind of structural problems that existed in the pre-COVID world. And unless the post-COVID world is going to be very dramatically different, which I don't see happening. Okay, so you have to understand what were the problems with each of the international organizations in the pre-COVID world, right? Now, a panel discussion like this is not sufficient time for us to understand that. So what I would really suggest you do is think about those problems. For example, with the WTO, what is the structural problem there, right? And the structural problem there is fundamentally the fact that the rich nations are subsidizing for example, take agriculture. They're subsidizing their agriculture to kingdom come. And given the fact that they're subsidizing their agriculture, they really, developing countries or the global south believes that they have really no right to ask us to lay open our markets. Now, if we are going to lay open our markets, they have to agree to stop subsidizing their agriculture. Only then will it become a level playing field, right? Now, unless you effectively agree to some kind of political compromise on those basic issues. Can America afford or Europe afford to stop subsidizing their agriculture politically, internally? Will French farmers live without agricultural subsidy? Will American farmers live without political agricultural subsidy? Can any president win an election saying that I'm going to stop subsidizing my farmers? Those are huge structural issues. Those things don't happen. Restructuring is a nice, it's like a nice label. It's not so simple. It's not so simple because any global political decision that you take always has local political costs. And any country will want to balance the global vis-a-vis the local. Yeah, because the cost that you will pay will always be local. And any politician will want to not pay a local cost for a potential might happen global benefit. That doesn't happen. It doesn't work that way. Right? So
Thank you, ma'am, for your answer. Now moving on to the next question. Next question is for Nandini, ma'am. Do the environmental benefits seen as a result of this global slowdown hint at the potential positive impacts of a Green New Deal?
Well, this is a very interesting question. Interesting in the sense that it's everybody is asking. But what do you do with a development paradigm that you have? I was just sharing kind of a joke that we stopped everything at the time when possibly the number of COVID patients were about 300 in this country. And we went for a lockdown when it was about, I don't know, 400 something or 500. And today we are at a lack of, that is the official figure. There are issues about that figure, so I'm not going to get into that also. But when we are at 1 lakh,
we're opening up.
Everybody is so restless that we have to open up, the economic activity, the life versus livelihood debate comes into play. Now the issue is this, the realization has to be there that for all practical purposes, for all particular reasons, you will not have a situation where economic activity recedes to the extent that it has receded now, and therefore the kind of fringe benefit. But let me also warn you that in spite of bluer sky, repairing of the ozone hole in the Arctic, you still have quite high carbon emission footprints, actually. At least America has not been, until and unless we do an assessment of the post-COVID carbon footprints, which would be just the month of, say, May and a little bit of April. Then we may see a little reduction in that. The truth of the matter is you cannot sustain within the development paradigm that you have adopted and that you want to continue. You will not be able to sustain this kind of environmental, rejuvenation that you might see today with
if you allow me to come in on that, that's the first problem that you are taught when you do an environment course in economics. If you stop all production, you will have zero pollution. But that's an axiom, right?
Yeah.
No production, no pollution. So but that's not the way to solve a pollution problem. If you don't have any production, you will also have no consumption. Are you okay?
So that is the thing. No? So the trade-off has to be understood. However, at the same time, if you have been listening to people like Mike Davis and Thomas Friedman, who is a climate change activist, he's saying that COVID at least has given you time. I mean, between continents, it is jumping fast. but still you have the time to reorganize yourselves, possibly get into finding a vaccine, possibly reorganize, think of spending a little more on your health infrastructure. But the climate change kind of a crisis that is about to come is not going to give you that time. It is going to take everything away in a jiffy. So the issue that you have to now think is where and how is this trade-off to be done? And please note, this trade-off cannot be done merely by an internalization of cost, because what an internalization of cost also does is allow some people to pollute more while others spend in order to get that right to pollute. So if the whole development paradigm is, based on that kind of an assumptive idea, that ultimately there has to be a certain level, and which we will call optimal pollution. But this optimal pollution is optimal from the point of view of the level of economic development. It is not optimal from your health standards or what you would consider to be sustainable, environmental air quality that gives you freedom to breathe, and that it's very difficult to incorporate those costs and do it. That is what I feel.
You really have to think about what they mean when they say a new Green Deal. What are they talking about? Right? Whose new Green Deal? Because the largest polluters in this case don't even want to be part of a Green Deal. They don't recognize there's an issue. Okay? So which new Green Deal are you talking about? Right? One of the things that you have to understand is not bounce jargon around.
Moving on to the next question. What would you advise a young Indian graduating or in search of a job student during this pandemic? It's for Meeta ma'am.
Chill.
Yeah.
That's always my advice. Just chill. It's always a good thing to do. Like you would say, take a chill pill, relax. See, the one thing that you have to do as a young student of Miranda House, you have, if you got into Miranda House, you're obviously very smart. What the future is going to demand from you is a lot of creativity. Because the future is uncertain. We don't know what it's going to be like. All the existing paradigms are going to break down if the world has to survive. What this particular epidemic has shown us is that the world as we know it is unsustainable. That's the one lesson that we can take, right? Now, how soon catastrophe happens, that is unpredictable. But I think from what Nandini ma'am is saying, and my own hunch is that the world has to be reorganized. Clearly, this kind of a thing is unsustainable from an epidemiology perspective. It's unsustainable from a environmental perspective. It's also unsustainable very clearly from an economic perspective, because if you look at how the world is reacting now. Everyone is trying to is overreacting to the globalization. So everyone is overreacting to this hyper globalization by saying, okay, let's go local. Now that's the most dangerous thing that you can do to in this kind of a situation, because the moment you say let's go local, you are going to get into a kind of a situation where you really deepen the recession that you were already in. So you are back in a early 20th century kind of a situation where you are at the brink of a world depression. Exactly, that kind of a situation. So the thing that will get you guys across in that kind of a situation is creativity. In having a broad set of skills.
All right, ma'am. Thanks for your
to
answer.
redefine yourself as the situation develops.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, ma'am. Thanks for your answer. Next question is for Nandini, ma'am. Do you think bringing changes to the formal education system such that the environment becomes innovative and nurturing could bring a positive change to the economy?
I think education intrinsically means to continuously innovate and nurture. And I think knowledge, there is nothing called knowledge for knowledge's sake. When we use that word, what we intrinsically imply is that knowledge should make a better human being out of us. So, and I consciously did not use the word economic being, but a better human being. The world as it stands today is going to test you and test us also in very different ways. Today, you might think that just because we are on the Zoom platform, just because we are on the virtual platform and we are connecting, this is going to be the future. No, this is also going to be broken down and there'll be something else. Some other algorithmic change, an artificial intelligence, some other, which is going to make this technology completely redundant. The issue is not that. The issue is, as Abid Hussain used to say at one point of time, that the university system teaches you certain skills, and they're very good at it. These skills cannot be taught to you hands down when you join, say, an internship in a company. The company can teach you exactly what you need to do in order to get into that company. But the soft skills that you learn, interpersonal relationships, how you meet up with people, how you are an alert person, that you are listening to information, how you are actually decoding that information and utilizing. These are things that the university system teaches. Since you're a science student, I will also say that there is, every time we get to hear there is something called market-linked courses, market-linked ideas, market-linked skills. They are very temporaneous because certain skills are constantly changing. Now, suppose a physics graduate thinks that, right now what I am doing is the greatest thing that I am doing. Within half a day, you will have another equation coming which can dismantle all this. But one good book that you would have read and felt inspired, that will remain throughout with all your life. So the issue is, at this moment, something else, like at one point of time, everybody wanted to do economics or commerce. Slowly, people want to do something like political science, theory, or something. So these changes will keep happening. The issue is, you have to understand that the university system will equip you to be a sensitive human being, to be a creative person, and to continuously innovate. But that innovation is not going to come from, classroom teaching to virtual teaching, from virtual teaching to some other form of teaching, from a pen and paper. Those are only format changes. Knowledge is a continuous flow. Right?
Mute.
Unmute.
Unmute yourself, Ujjwala.
Yeah, actually, that's an instruction to mute yourself. Okay. My last question is for Meeta, ma'am. Raghuram Rajan recently said that there is no trade-off between saving lives and saving livelihood. What do you think will be the economic cost of an extended lockdown, and what provisions should be placed so as to lessen its impact?
Look, ideally there should be no trade-off, right? But the mistake that we make is we think that there is only one form of a lockdown, which is this complete lockdown that of the kind that we had. But across the world, you've seen that the lockdown has meant different things to different people, different countries. right? There are countries where public transport has functioned. There are countries where schools will function. There are countries where within. So how restrictive should a lockdown be? Right? That's a $1 million question. In India, what you have done is you brought literally millions of people to the brink of what we call an entitlements breakdown. What is an entitlements breakdown? Meaning basically a livelihood, a loss of livelihood. Okay, where what you have done is you, as Nandini was saying, that you had 300 cases, and in order to sort of take care of, isolate those 300 cases, what you did is you lakhs of people, you brought the economy to a place where lakhs and lakhs and lakhs of people lost their jobs. That's the kind of a trade-off.
Can I just come in?
Yeah, please.
I just wanted to come in over here. What has happened when we talk about economic costs? In a certain sense, what has happened is that we have visibilized the invisible. That is, all the commodities and the profusion that was symbol of your prosperity, the economic GDP, is essentially kind of embodied in the labor of these teeming million who came down onto the roads, and possibly for the first time showed to this country and to all the entire world that it is these people who were actually running your well-oiled machine, the capitalist machinery, but yet you could not take care of them. They have now
half the population of
Delhi. They have now given up. Not only given up on the middle class, they have given up on the people who live in those houses that are constructed by them, but they don't have a place in this city. And look at the way we have handled that. This was torturous. This was terrible. If there is an economic cost, is not only an addition to what you would say, an addition to the GDP. That's not the only problem. Look at this economic cost, which is so humongous. Can we ever replace it?
All right. We were honored to have such a great panel. It has been a great session. Thank you for moderating the discussion in accordance with the audience present. Thank you all for joining. That's it for today.